Welcome to, I guess, the St. Pat's post-game show here tonight. The Toronto St. Pat's taking on the New York Islanders, Game 69, breaking it all down right here on the Leafs Nation 401 YouTube channel, talking about tonight's loss, what we saw, what we liked, what we didn't like, as well as the Maple Leafs' new signing that we got here earlier today out of college, a college free agent coming through. So we'll break all of that down here tonight on the post-game show. And yes, I am the most green man on the internet here today, at least covering hockey, that is. If you look around, there's probably people more green, whether it's because of how they're feeling after spending a full day at the bar or what they're wearing in terms of their clothing. But as far as people covering hockey right now, I'm probably the most green man there is. Thanks to the St. Pat's and my sister, for that matter, who hooked me up with some pretty unreal gear from the Maple Leafs. So shout out to her. In tonight's postgame, as I said, we'll break it all down. I just want to lay some things out here for everybody. We'll talk about this game, but the nature of the season, I think it just expands beyond tonight's game and what happened. We'll talk more so about some of the kids that we're seeing, I should say loosely, that we're seeing playing. You know, you see Quillen, Grew, Cowan, what did we make of their games here tonight? We'll talk about some of the guys in general. You know, what do we see out of Maccelli or guys like Dakota Joshua, and who could come back and who may not come back, that kind of stuff here, as well as what we might get into in the summer, and then how the rest of the season could potentially play out. So we'll break it all down here on tonight's post-game show. But some of the other things that I want to make sure we get to here are your chat involvement. So whether you guys want to comment in the show and be a part of it here, if you guys in the chat give your thoughts, I will read them, answer them, and have them part of the show here tonight. But more specifically, if you want to be a part of the show, the easiest way to do so will be through calling in, which we will open up the call lines in a bit. But the other way would be through Super Chats, and proceeds from our Super Chats go to Sick Kids Charity, Canada's #1 research-intensive children's hospital, #3 in North America. You guys send in those super chats by clicking that square box that you see in the chat there. It's got a little $sign in it. You can type the message that you want to send. You click send. I will read every single super chat that comes in here tonight on the post-game show. We'll break it all down. We'll get to the calls. We'll do the smelling salts for every 50 likes, all of that and more. But we've got a special guest here on the show tonight, so let's not waste any more time. Let's welcome to the program, from the Hockey Hot Stove, covering the Maple Leafs, Mike in Buffalo. Mike, how you doing tonight? You're not wearing your St. Pat's screen. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, I'm a slacker. Good evening and welcome to St. Pat's After Dark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I did change it up a little bit. I named today's show, it says the Toronto St. Pat's with the Clover versus the New York Islanders. So it's all themed for the Toronto St. Pat's here tonight. I don't know how that'll play for me and the algorithm and all that kind of stuff, but it's one night. So you gotta buy into the theme of it all.
Yeah, no, I mean, once a year I don't mind seeing the green jerseys, and it's cool, and it's a nice change, and it's a little nod to history, so I have no problem with it. But thankfully for members of the Tank Nation, the Leafs, after earning points in the last 3 games and 5 of a possible 6, they got back to what we need them to do, which is lose, and lose often.
Yeah, it's something I do pretty much every morning, is wake up and check where we're at in the Tankathon. I call it the Tankathon Top 5 now, because I was getting way too confused calling it the bottom 5 and then the top 5 and all that stuff. So the easiest way was to distinguish this as the Tankathon Top 5, because at the end of every show, we run the simulator here on the channel. So I'll just keep it. I've been keeping it simple for myself. But, you pick up 5 points, 5 of possible 6 before tonight's game, and it's like, well, what the hell? You were right there. You could smell a lottery ball pick, a top 5 pick, Gary Bettman and Bill Daly flipping the cards over, and the Maple Leafs coming up, and then they go and rattle off a bunch of points. It's like, how did we get here? How did this happen? But a loss here tonight gets us in the right direction. Quickly, actually, I want to talk to you about something St. Pat's before we talk about like actual real hockey stuff and what we saw on the ice and that kind of stuff. I love the Matt Sundin era St. Pat's gear, and I'm well aware when I say that, by the way, that that's like a nod to the original St. Pat's gear that they wore. It's not specifically designed for the Matt Sundin era, but they modernized it is more so what I'm getting at here. I loved that era of the St. Pat's gear, like the dark green jersey, the banner across the front with the OG St. Pat's logo, the brown gloves, the brown pants, the brown helmets. I love that. I think they overcooked it a little bit in terms of trying to make it too modern with the new St. Pat's stuff. I get, like, you see the logo on my chest here. They tried to make it, it's the clover, but it also kind of resembles the maple leaf a little bit and stuff like that. Like it's in there. I love the old stuff, man. The new is a little bit too much for me. I don't have a problem with that, I want to be clear, but I like the old stuff better.
I think it's a marketing thing because obviously they can sell these jerseys St. Pat's to everybody because hey, we got a hockey jersey that says St. Pat's and doesn't say Toronto on it because if memory serves, it did say Toronto St. Pat's on the Sundin era jersey. So I liked that. I mean, I'm a sucker for throwback jerseys. I loved the Toronto Arenas jersey that they had a few years ago. I thought those were really sharp. Now there have been some other ones like the ones they wore for the big house, the outdoor game. I wasn't really enthused about that, but most of the time when they go back to a classic jersey like the '64 jersey with the frilly maple leaf that they pretty much wear now, whenever they do a throwback jersey, I'm sold. There you go.
Yeah, the only one that ever was just an automatic full-blown no-no to me was the reverse retro one that they did. that one, I was like, well, maybe on TV it'll get me and I'll think differently of it. On TV was almost worse than what it was when I saw the renderings and everything. They could have done that one so much better. It was like the gray numbers and the gray shoulder caps. You couldn't, like, we see the team every night. We know what the who the players are and what numbers guys are wearing and whatever. You don't need the numbers necessarily to tell. But I'm feeling for Joe Bowen, who's sitting up there calling play-by-play on that one. He's squinting like, does anyone know what number that was? Because I don't. In real time, it must have been impossible to tell. I hated those ones.
Yeah, and every iteration of the Maple Leafs, going back to the Arenas and the St. Patrick's, they'd never worn gray. So where the did they get gray for their jerseys? And I know for a fact because I know people who cover the Flyers in Philadelphia, when they did the reverse retro jerseys for them, they had orange numbers on a similar color background, and you couldn't read the numbers. They were etched, like had a framing in black, but you can read them. It almost looked 3D. So it was like.
Oh, sorry. I just blipped on the connection on you there, Mike. You got it back, though. So you're good. Sorry, if you want to continue. You just said they almost looked 3D. That was the last thing I got of you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, they almost right. No, they were edged with black, so it looked pretty weird. But yeah, I'll end my rant there when it comes to the Flyers.
Fair enough. Okay, let's go to tonight's game. So the Maple Leafs obviously lose this one here and don't get any points, which is like the best possible scenario. I think we got to watch a fun game from Matthew Schaefer. Cal Ritchie returns to Toronto. I said this in the game preview that I did earlier today. You know, everyone's looking at Schaefer. Ritchie's going to be another guy that I'm going to be looking at because I was giving out the bets there and saying this is another one to watch here tonight to score because he's going to return and be all amped up too, even though Matthew Schaefer is going to get the limelight on this one. But this to me, Mike, felt like the Leafs just kind of got back to lackadaisical, disinterested, disjointed, disconnected hockey. It felt like a continuation of what we heard out of morning skate here, where Craig Berube was all over the team about not having the intensity, not having the energy, and just not showing up. He blamed it off of travel from Minnesota, which I think is bullshit. But it just felt like it was just a continuation of that here, Mike. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, it was the season in microcosm. It was basically, especially the third goal where Nealon Sorry, I'm locked up there for a second. I'm not sure what's going on.
All good. I think it's me. My internet seems to be having some type of bandwidth issue right now, so I'm working on fixing that. But you're good.
Okay. All right, I'll just keep rambling then. But yeah, no, I mean, I think Nylander, the way he played tonight on that one goal was just sort of like symptomatic of what this team has shown throughout. And honestly, I don't want to hear about them showing up and fighting and being physical. The time that you needed to be physical and show up was when your captain was crumpled on the ice and you didn't show squat. So after the fact, them being tough, Morgan Rielly fighting against McLean, or them being physical against Buffalo, or coming out in the third period, too little, too late. You showed your true character in that few minutes at the end of the second period against Anaheim, and there's no going back.
Yeah, the one big issue that I have with what's happening right now is it just all feels performative. Like, it feels like it's all fake. Yeah, that's the right word to use. It feels like it's fake here because on one hand, I appreciate the fact that they are responding, right? Like, it's better than them just seeing what happened, being called out, being embarrassed, and then nothing, because that would almost just be even more embarrassing. But to continue to see this happen and these instances arise and McLean bump into Woll, which I think was completely incidental. It's like on a normal night, I probably look at it and I'm like, hey, great job by Morgan Rielly. You know, he jumped in there and he stepped up and he did that. But that should be the expectation every night, not just because of what happened last Thursday. And I know Berube and True Living has been drilling this down. We heard the reports that True Living called guys and was livid. Like, great. That's great. Okay, great. We've all been saying that for 10 years here now, Mike. It's too little, too late. The only way that this means anything to me really for next season, or excuse me, in general, is if they come out next season and continue this over and show it every single night, because that's what the Panthers do. That's what the Lightning do. That's what you're privy to see the Buffalo Sabres do every single night. It doesn't matter. Winning, losing, it doesn't matter if your captain got hit. It doesn't matter if the worst player on your team got hit. Everybody responds to everything and has that snap call where they just jump in there and get on you. It just feels like it's very performative, and I can't really buy in right now.
Well, it's funny that you said the Sabres, because the same thing happened to the Sabres last year. Mm-hmm. Stefan Nason from the Devils hits Tage Thompson up high, and nobody does a damn thing. And nobody does a damn thing for the rest of the game. And then the next game, Dennis Gilbert, who's no longer on the Sabres, drops gloves with Matthew Olivier. And I'm like, talk about an impotent show. I mean, it's like, great, Michael Pezzetta gets into a fight the game after, or Dakota Joshua fights, I think it was Luke Shen in Buffalo. Who gives a crap? That's meaningless. What you needed to show, and the only player of the four that I forgive is Easton Cowan, because he's 20 years old. But the rest of them, Morgan Rielly now is trying to show I'm tough, or I'm buying into this baloney. And we know William Nylander, they blatantly lied to all of us, lied to the reporters, lied to the fans by saying, I didn't see this. But you know what? That must be in the player's handbook, because the Sabre players, after Thompson was hit last year, said pretty much the same thing. So, I think that's basically what they say. Even if they have video that shows them looking right at them, that's what they say. And, they hope that everybody moves on. But the problem is that Matthews is out for the year. And if it doesn't change, and of course, being the student of the Leafs, this isn't going to change with this group. I'm not for just trading players for nothing, but this has got to end. And that means, William Nylander, give me a list of 5 teams, and in the summer we find a new home for you, and hopefully we can make a fair deal from the point of Brad for living. And if you can't, then you're stuck with them. But it's got to change, because nothing is going to change if you keep these players around.
Yeah, and just my last point on like the toughness thing and the response here on this is the biggest distinction for me it feels like this is something they're doing because they were told to do and not because of who they are. And that's the biggest issue for me, is that what happens when all of this kind of dies down and you more than likely get a new coach and the team shuffles here in the summer and you come back next season. In my opinion, it's more of the same, and it's kind of because of the reasons you just laid out, where the identity is shaped by the guys who are at the top of your lineup. Austin Matthews, William Nylander. I mean, you could throw Morgan Rielly in there. I think he's had more bite to him and more response to him over the course of his time as a Maple Leaf than the other guys, but still not enough when push comes to shove. Point in case, the Radko Gudas situation, in which he was right there watching the play unfold and he did nothing, despite saying, I didn't really see it. He was there, and we've seen the footage and we've seen the pictures of him looking at it. It just feels like this is because they were told to do it and not because this is something they want to do or something that's in them to do. And that's what scares the shit out of me. And you know, you brought up, and we'll probably bounce all over the place here on it, but changing things and trying to get the right packages back if you're going to move off of a William Nylander, or the conversations now arising about what happens with an Austin Matthews come this summer and the direction of the team, and does he want to be here? The thing that scares me, Mike, even above those guys is, okay, let's say that is the decision, right? Let's say the decision is we can't have Matthews here or Nylander here, or the answer is we can't have either of them here. Let's say that's the case. Brad Treliving doesn't inspire very much hope in me that he's the guy who can make the right trade and bring back the right pieces or assets to set the team up for the future. Because when you make that trade, is the team going to be in a playoff position next year? Are they going to be a Stanley Cup contender? I'd say more likely no than yes, just given the nature of what that trade will do. But if you make the right trades or trade in that situation there, Mike, you could set yourself up to be competitive again 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and be a legitimate team. I just don't feel very comfortable about Brad Treliving being the right guy in that position to make those trades.
Well, if you look at it on three levels, I mean, we know, unless we're completely off base, that Craig Berube will be coaching the last 13, 14 games of his Leaf career that he's done. They have to fire him because I think the players have tuned him out, and clearly they don't listen to him anymore. Even when he's yelling and screaming at them, it seems like they've tuned him out. So that's the easy one. The tough one is, what is Keith Pelly and what is the MLS&E board imagine as a structure for this team going forward? Because we know what Rogers has done. They've eliminated that sort of middle management. They've eliminated that team president or, president of hockey or basketball or whatever operations. They eliminated Jerry. They've eliminated Shanahan. Are they all of a sudden going to, the only team that has a president is the Blue Jays. Are they going to go back on that and name a team president? And if that team president is hired, is he going to keep Brad Treliving around, or is he going to find his own general manager? That's question one, because if Pelly decides, well, no, I'm not going to hire a president, then pretty much Brad Treliving without the title is your president.
Yep.
And then he's got complete control, and he's going to hire the coach, and it's going to be his second coach. Now you could say, I agree with this, and I've seen and heard other people. Brad Treliving is not responsible for the downfall of this team. That's all on Brendan Shanahan, because Brendan Shanahan is the one who told him basically when he was hired after he fired Kyle Dubas in May, you're not going to trade any of the core four, and they allowed the no-move clause on Marner to pass, and then they signed Nylander to the 8-year deal, and you had to trade one of them, not because they're not good players, but because they're all the same type of player, and you needed to get back assets to help you in different areas. And what did you get? You got Nick Waugh. That's what you got, and that doesn't help you right now.
Yeah, I'm curious how you think about this. I've tried to, because I get caught up in the emotions of it myself, and I try to take a step back and evaluate what's happened, because I think a lot of what we see online in Leafs Nation as Leafs fans is the argument that gets put out there between, like the Dubasites and then like your rough and tumble, beat 'em up, break 'em down, uncle on the couch hockey fan, where it goes back and forth between like skill and speed and beat them up and wear them down. And I think that a lot of that gets associated with Tree Living versus Dubas and the two mindsets. And a lot of people want to pin what's happening right now on Tree Living. To your point, I would agree with you. A lot of that has to do with Brendan Shanahan, but I think Tree Living, in a sense here, is getting too much heat for how this has gone right now. And I know that's going to sound, very like opposite of what I just pointed out with not trusting Tree Living to make the trades. I think that's a separate argument, which I can explain. But I just think that Tree Living was given a situation in which they had no young guys coming through. They had minimal picks coming through. He just traded the last of what they have. He signed the Matthews and the Nylander contracts, which I don't think anybody has an issue with, but he didn't trade Marner when he got here like a month before the Marner no trade stuff came in. That's really the only one that he could have done with the big boys, other than force Marner out or found a way to force him out earlier. He just has made some wrong moves here that have been accelerated because all of the future and the picks and the young guys coming through were non-existent. And that was part because of Shanahan and part because of Kyle Dubas, who led going into this. So I think it's just a combination of everything. He's just the final piece. And why I want to make a clarification for myself, because I said two things that are very opposed to each other there, is just Tree Living, I don't trust being the guy to execute the trades because he doesn't have a great track record with the trades. He doesn't win many trades. He is a pretty unreal negotiator. Like the contracts he signed, I've really not had any issue with outside of the David Kampf one, which I still believe, Mike, was not him. I think that was agreed upon by Shanahan and their regime before the GM swap took place, and Tree Living just had to be the front-facing guy of it. I could be wrong, but that's my personal belief. But it's just a frustrating spot to be in right now.
I have a feeling that when they saw Ryan O'Reilly walking out the door, they said, we got to sign Camp because he's our third-line center. And as soon as they signed him, they realized he wasn't good enough to be a fourth-line center. Yeah. But yeah, no, there were decisions made. His first year as general manager with the Ryan Reeves signing, which I thought was, even though it wasn't costly, it was dumb because he was spent. He was over the hill. Yeah. The Max Domi 1-year deal, fine. The Tyler Bertuzzi 1-year deal, fine. The David Camp deal, I agree with you. The second year, his signings were good. Bringing in Tanev, especially. But the problem was you could trade one first-round pick. You could not trade two, and he traded two. He traded the 26 and the 27. And, obviously the whole top 5 or top 10 protected thing, we've discussed that ad nauseum. I mean, honestly, I'm no general manager. I'm not playing one online here. But I'm sorry, if you have a deal for Brandon Carlo, who clearly – the Boston Bruins want to move because they're trading everybody, and you go to them and they say, well, top 5 protected, and you say top 10 protected, and they say, no, it's got to be top 5. Then I walk away because are you telling me you're getting a first round pick and a top prospect in Fraser Minton? You're telling me they're going to walk away over top 5 to top 10? That's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, negotiating wise, I see your point. I just look at it this way. If they fire him, that'll be the 4th general manager in less than a decade. Lamoriello, Dubas, Tree Living, and then the unknown. And with all those general managers, you're changing over scouting departments and scouts and things of that nature. And, that doesn't yield stability. That yields chaos. And right now, I don't know if this organization needs any more chaos than it has right now.
It's also crazy to consider the GM versus coach situation, because let's say you fire the GM. We assume one is going to happen anyways, but let's say you fire the GM. You're also firing the coach, which means you're bringing in another guy, which I don't have an issue with the number of coaches that get cycled through. The one thing I commonly point out here is coaches Vegas has gone through, coaches Dallas have gone through, coaches the Edmonton Oilers have gone through. Now, have those teams all won Stanley Cups? No, Vegas is the only one who has, but they're not afraid to cycle guys and say this isn't working. Similar thing happens in Boston. Look down the bench, go, this guy doesn't work anymore, gone. Let's get a different voice, because oftentimes that's the easiest one that happens. It's amazing to me that we would then be at a point where we would be at 4 GMs and 4 coaches. That feels unbelievable. Like, I'm not, and it's not like the least common thing to happen in the NHL, but just to look at it and very directly point to the same number of GMs and the same number of coaches, it just feels strange that those numbers would match up. But I want to bring this kind of back together, and let's talk about some stuff that happens in the summer, because let's look at the trades and the signings that Brad Treliving had made over his time. We don't have to get into every one, but in general here, Mike, the idea that was in mind, and I think this is where it gets lost on people, because I saw a tweet that was going viral today, I think it was, and back into last night, from somebody saying, this is what you deserve because this is what you asked for of this Maple Leafs team, was for them to be big and mean and tough. My counterpoint to it is, I think a lot of Leafs fans were just tired of watching their team get bullied and get embarrassed, right? I don't think it was that we wanted to see, the Broad Street Bullies reassembled here in Toronto. It was just like, we just run up against Boston and Tampa and Florida every year, and we visibly get bullied. Regardless of what you think about the play and the skill level and stuff in those series, they got bullied. We were tired of that. I think a lot of what happened by Brad Treliving was him bringing guys in and trying to construct a team that would outweigh the lack of give a fuck or balls from your big boys, and saying, well, they don't have it, so we'll have to bring it in elsewhere.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, and I believe I'm quoting the all-wise and powerful Jeff Merrick when I say this. He said, I believe he said, well, the Leafs got big. But where have they gotten tough? I mean, Brandon Carlo is big, and Dakota Joshua will throw a check. Scott Lawton as well. But they've gotten big. Nick Waugh wasn't particularly tough. They're not throwing their weight around. The teams like Florida and Tampa, they throw their weight around. They make their presence felt. Toronto really just, I think, sort of shrinks from that kind of. And that mentality is sort of pervasive with this team, because it's like, okay, it's like an infection. It's all of a sudden everybody's going to play soft, even if, they're 6'4" and 230 pounds. I mean, Nick Waugh dropped the gloves in his first game in Colorado. Where the hell was that for most of this year? So I don't know if it's inherent, if they're being coached that way, if they're saying, well, we don't want to play that way, so everybody else has got to play the same way. But that sucks, because that is not winning hockey, and playing physical hockey is playing winning hockey.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I don't get, Mike, is that these guys, because I agree with you. I want to be clear. I agree with you that these guys are big, but they're not tough and throwing their weight around and stuff. But like, the guys that are brought in here are brought in with the idea in mind that they are going to throw their weight around, even if they're not the meanest guys in the world. Like, you could watch Nick Waugh in Vegas. He used his size, he used his physicality, and then you just pointed out he goes to Colorado and he fights. Like, it's, yes, one example there, he is fighting, whatever, but you have this idea in mind. It seems to be a cultural issue. Like, it's a systemic cultural issue that takes place here. Every time players get brought in here around this group to be a part of this group, that they come here and whatever it is that they had, it's neutered. Like, it is just sucked out of them and disappears, because a lot of them end up going on to other places, and you just see that come right back into their game. That is the big picture conversation that is making my brain explode with these guys.
And everybody thought it was the way Sheldon Keefe coached, and then they bring in Craig Berube, who had that team in St. Louis with, Sammy Blais and Sundquist and Ryan O'Reilly, and they had tough guys out, and Pat Maroon, and they were yeah, okay, they had a team mentality, and that's the way that they played. What's the team mentality here? You bring in a player, and maybe he's a physical player, but if nobody else is going to back him up, why would you be physical? Then you're out. Then you're out on a limb, and if the other team responds, okay, we just saw what happened when you're out on a limb, when somebody is either taking advantage or, in this instance with Gudis, injured you, and nobody was there to pick him up. So I mean, that is a mentality. I don't know how it changes. All I know is that we've given this core group now, 9, 10 years, and nothing has changed. You could use the excuse that they were young. You could use the excuse that they were offensive players and that they're not this type of player, but they would grow into it. Matthews could grow into being like a Mark Messier or whatever. No, I think he is what he is. I think Nylander is what he is. I'm not saying that you throw them away because they're great players offensively, but championship teams have skill and speed and snarl and sandpaper, and I'll try to think of a few more S's, but you need all those aspects. You need good defense, you need toughness, you need a little fear, you need good goaltending, and you need offense. And this team has maybe one or possibly two of those factors and not all five. And that, if you don't have all five, you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning a Stanley Cup.
I think the other S word you were looking for was snot. I think that was the word that was thrown around. Snot, Mike. I think that was the one you need. Okay, there's probably a lot that we can continue to get to on this, and I'll have you back on a bunch during the end of this season going into the summer, so it will continue to get discussed and debated and thrown around. And even as far as tonight goes, I'm sure we're not done with the conversation, but I do want to talk a little bit about the lineup, the line construction, who's playing with who, and how some of these guys played. Is it too obvious and is it too easy to just say Max Domi cannot be playing as your second line center? And I'm not talking about even in a world in which you're trying to win. I'm talking about situationally right now here as well. Not that Bo Grew is the savior, not that Jacob Quillen is the savior, but watching Nyes, Domi, and Cowan was making me want to hit my head against the wall during this game. It's just like, there's Cowan. He has a little burst up the ice. Domi gets it and turnover. Or, through the neutral zone, skating into the three guys at the blue line and turning a puck over, going back the other way. Nyes does something great, gets in, wins a forecheck, and turnover. It's just over and over and over again. It feels like a completely wrong construction. I don't understand the desire to put Max Domi at 2C. I understand you're missing some of your depth with Lawton and Waugh traded and Austin Matthews being out of your lineup with an injury here now, but put one of the young guys in there, man. Put Quillen up there. Put Grew up there. Like, let one of them play. Give one of them an opportunity to play some more minutes and with some better players. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but it just seems so easy and so obvious. I am tired of watching Max Domi play second line center.
Yeah, I mean, if you're of the mindset that you want this team to tank, then put Max Domi at number one center because he'll facilitate the tank. Honestly, I would put Tavares with Nyes and Cowan because then you'd have a competent center, and maybe you put Domi with Nylander so they can, one can give away the puck and the other one can walk away from the puck. That's a perfect line. But I'm telling you right now, like, he's proved over his entire tenure with the Leafs that he's a horrible defensive player. The problem is he's horrible on the wing and he's horrible at center. And they figure, okay, well, we don't want to play Benoit Gruel or Jacob Quillen more than 10 minutes a night. Now, with Gruel, they're playing him much more. Tonight they only played him, 12 minutes and 13 seconds. Mm-hmm. So I think that might be his low. And because they played him like 19 minutes against Buffalo. What you need to do is find out what kind of player Jacob Quillen is. We know what type of center Max Domi is. He sucks at center. He is terrible. He is a giveaway machine. He's not particularly tough up the middle. I mean, I think he's better on the wing, but that's not saying much because he's not good on the wing either. He doesn't win puck battles along the wall. But at this point right now, you're in, 14 games left. You're in a time of year where you want to find out what you have within the organization. And the thing that pissed me off the most was you call up Michael Pezzetta. I don't need this. I know what Michael Pezzetta is. He's, in the game against Buffalo, he took, I think, 2 or 3 minors. It's like, okay, that's what he does. He takes stupid penalties and he fights. Okay, we had Ryan Reeves, and that's what he did. I want to see what Quillen can do with more, what a miracle. He got over 10 minutes tonight. How about 14, 15? Play him on the second line. Let's see what he's got. Luke Hames has scored a bunch of goals down with the Marlies recently. He's played a lot better. I want to look at him. I want to look at William Villeneuve. Could you give Henry Thrun a chance? Obviously, Berube doesn't like him, but honestly, I would rather see what Henry Thrun has than we know what Philippe Myers has, which is nothing. So, yeah. I'm sure that the dynamic within the Leaf organization is that Craig Berube has control of the roster. But at this point, late in the season, Brad Treliving's got to go to him and say, well, okay, I don't know what's going to happen to you. We need to find out about these players. We need to find out whether Quillen can play on the fourth line next year. We need to find out if Gruel can play on the fourth line next year or third line or whatever. Because one more player that we find out about is one less player that they have to go out in free agency or go out to trade for. That's what they have to do. But right now, there doesn't seem to be any kind of direction in this organization to tell Craig Berube what the hell to do.
That is my exact thought on the situation of finding out what you have here as well. Because I know people keep pointing out in the chat, they're like, well, Quillen hasn't really shown that much. Well, he hasn't really been given that much opportunity here to show very much. And I get that he hasn't stood out or jumped off the page in any of these games that he's played in. I'm fine with that assessment. I'm not going to disagree with anybody, but it's just, how easy is it for you to tell whether or not a guy's got it when you're playing him for 6 to 8 minutes and like 2/3 minutes of his usage every night are on penalty kill situations? Like that's the extent of how you're using the guy. You're not really getting to see him at 5-on-5. You're not getting to see him with more offensively inclined players. Like you're putting him out there with Calle Yarncroke and Steven Lorentz and saying, make it happen, buddy. And it's like, well, it's not really going to come because that's just not how that works necessarily. I want to see those guys get more opportunities, but I agree 100%. You got to take this out of his hands. You got to take this away from Craig Berube and just say, you don't get to decide this anymore. Like this is going to be, I don't know if the right word is experimental, but more or less an experimental period where we figure these things out. Also, I just want to point out, Mike, I don't really disagree with you on the whole Pezzetta thing. I didn't have a problem with him coming up and playing. He's a bubble NHL player. He probably shouldn't be playing. He's a fine guy to have around. I just liked the energy that he brought because it was just something we didn't have at all. The thing that pissed me off the most, Mike, and I'm curious if you agree with this or not, was the comment from Craig Berube before the game against Anaheim where he said something along the lines of, it's a player we've been looking at for a while and wanting to see. And then he played him for 3 minutes and 43 seconds. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to argue that Michael Pezzetta should be playing 15 minutes a night, but what the fuck does that mean? What do you mean you've been wanting to see this guy and you've been waiting to see this guy and then you play him for 3:43? I know he was in the box for a bunch and there was some penalties back and forth, but what are we doing? After the second period, that would have been green light for me to put Michael Pezzetta out there and just be like, run around, dude. We send a message back.
Well, the roster management and the time allocation by Craig Berube this year has been baffling. And that's being kind. There has to be a realization that, certain players, and I know that the people in the chat will lose their minds, and Morgan Rielly is public enemy number one. But Craig Berube is in part responsible for what's going on with Morgan Rielly. He's not a top pairing defenseman anymore. He's not a 20-minute-a-night defenseman anymore. If you play him in sheltered minutes, 14, 15 minutes, second pair, he probably can be competent, but he doesn't do that. He puts him out there in all offensive opportunities on the top pairing with Brandon Carlo, and you expose him because he can't move the way he used to move. He's not as good offensively as he used to be. I don't think he's adjusted his mind to what he is now, and that takes time sometimes with veteran players. They have to realize, I can't catch up on a giveaway that I gave that I used to be able to catch up 4 or 5 years ago. I just can't do it. I don't have the foot speed anymore. Is it necessary that Morgan Rielly has to be traded or has to be bought out? Well, no. If a coach who actually knows what the hell he's doing with them is here, then I think he could be a reclamation project. But the problem is Craig Berube, not only, we've talked about Austin Matthews with defensive zone draws, not putting him in offensive situations enough. Great, he's a great defensive player, but he's one of the best offensive players in the league. You put him on draws in the offensive zone so he can blast the puck past the goalie. And this thing with, and this is not the same thing with, the other coaches do the same thing. I have a perfect example. Lindy Ruff in Buffalo, they called up Isak Rozan, the first-round pick from 2021. They called him up maybe 3 or 4 times over the last couple years. Every time, they played him on the fourth line with a bunch of cement mixers, just like they played Quillen with Pizzetta and Dakota Joshua. Yeah, you're going to find out what the hell that kid can do with those two lummoxes. So, okay, every time he'd bring up Rozan, he'd play him on the fourth line, he'd play him 8 minutes, and he'd go right back to Rochester. This guy scored almost 30 goals for the Amerks. They call him up. They had a bunch of injuries. They played him on a third line. He had 3 goals in 15 games. I'm like, gee, when you give a guy some opportunity, look what he's done with it. And then at the deadline, who was the first guy that gets traded for a couple, depth defensemen? Isak Rozan. It's like an organization decides that they don't like a player, or a coach decides that they don't like a player, and that's the first guy out the door. And with Craig Berube, you can't send these guys out the door, but you sure as hell can limit their minutes, and you can play an over-the-hill Kali Yarncroke, play him more than you play Quillen or sometimes Gruel. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you see Gruel get more opportunities. You pointed out how many minutes he was playing over the weekend. I think 19 it was that he touched when he got in the game against Buffalo. And it's like, is the guy going to score 27, 30 goals, 40 goals in the NHL every year? No, probably not. That's unlikely. He's 26 years old. That's probably not the trajectory that he's on. But could he be a 20-goal scorer over an 82-game schedule if he plays every night in the NHL? I don't know. I don't know, Mike. But that's the point. We don't know. So find out. And then you see in those games where he gets 15, 16, 17, 19 minutes like the game against Buffalo, he's scoring goals. Scores 2 goals against Minnesota Wild. Looks good offensively, creating his own opportunities, putting pressure on guys, making plays defensively. You play the guys, you see it, and then you realize, oh, maybe some of this does translate. Bobby McMahon was a late bloomer into the NHL. I'm not trying to say Gruel will be Bobby McMahon, but there is a track record for guys getting to the NHL late, figuring it out, figuring out their game, taking more time down in the minor leagues, and then getting themselves up into the NHL and then finding their role. But you won't find that out, or it's much harder to find that out if you refuse to play the guys. It's so hard to do. So, that's why I was happy to see Gruel play in those games and get opportunities. And I think it just kind of supports my claim. And yours too, as you're saying here, where it's play the guys and play them in the right opportunities, and you're going to get more out of them. But it just worries me down the stretch that Berube's the guy leading the charge. It really does.
Yeah, and who seems to be the guy who is eating up the minutes vacated by Austin Matthews? Matias Maccelli. And he played 18 minutes tonight. Okay. I would bench Matias Maccelli for the rest of the season because he's got 33 points right now, and he's scoring at a point per game pace right now. And people don't, maybe people don't remember the clause in the deal. If he scores 51 points, the pick that they gave up moves from a third to a second. And this team can't afford to give up a second round pick instead of a third round pick with the lack of draft capital they have. Now, if the assertion that James Myrtle made in The Athletic is true, and he said that he believes that they won't qualify Maccelli, then all this is this late season run, this late season just respectability, his ability to just like, he's scoring like crazy now. This is, where was this guy when the games matter? Now it's empty. It's like A-Rod hitting home runs. It's like, he hit the most meaningless home runs in Major League Baseball, and Matias Maccelli is scoring the most meaningless points. And I can just see this guy scoring 17 or 18 points in the last 13 or 14 games and have the Leafs having to give up a second round pick and then not qualifying him. It would be disaster on top of disaster.
I see a comment in the chat, Justin Bennett saying they're pumping up Maccelli's points to make him look valuable. Dude's gone in the offseason. Well, the Leafs don't get anything for that if they pump up his points. He will just be gone. That's it. So there's no point.
They have to qualify. Okay, so they have to qualify him with at least a 10% increase. So that means $3.7, $3.8 million. He probably takes that. He probably takes the qualifying offer. And now, if you're qualifying him so you can trade him, okay, but at most, are you going to get the third round pick that you lost back? I mean, I don't see him having any kind of great value. If he did, teams that needed scoring wingers would have traded for him at the deadline. But they didn't.
So there's my frustration as well, and I'm looking at it a little bit more as a simpleton than anything else. But if you came to the conclusion in the summer, even if you had come, maybe it's more so because it's coming public here right now, and they could have just done this behind closed doors, and I wouldn't have the same frustrations. But if you came to the conclusion in the summer, we're not going to qualify and we're not going to bring the guy back, that's a different story. 2 weeks after the trade deadline, a week and a half after the trade deadline, to have it publicly coming out that you're not going to qualify the guy and have no desire to bring him back, it makes my mind like bend into a pretzel, Mike, because I start to wonder, why was there not more of a push to find a suitor for the guy? Like, why was there not a push to find somebody who would have taken Matias Maccelli? Even if it was like a 6th round pick, Mike. Something. It's better than nothing. And maybe they qualify him and they do trade him in the summer and somebody does say, fuck it, we'll take him. But maybe that's the case. But to me, it's just like, why was there not much more of a push or an interest to move off of the player at the deadline when a week and a half later it's coming out publicly you're not going to bring him back? Like, the asset management here makes no sense to me. It's very, very confusing how they're approaching these guys. It's just not having foresight on some of the situations about players that you have. Goes back to the Easton Cowan situation and where he was at, and just the usage of guys. And even in the summer, when you look at all your defensemen getting older and not deciding, hey, we'll bring in some more young pieces or revamp the D in some way, you don't look far enough ahead. You're taking it almost day by day now. It's confusing, to say the least.
Yeah, and the one thing that they didn't do, and I thought for sure they were going to do this, is they didn't retain salary on anybody. Yeah. Now, McMahon was making 1.35 and Lawton was making half of what he was making with Philadelphia. I think it was 1.5. And Waugh was $3 million. They didn't have to retain on Waugh, which I was surprised with Colorado because they're fairly tight up against the cap. The other two, they had smaller salaries. But are you telling me that you couldn't have increased your draft capital by retaining salary, even on guys that were pending unrestricted free agents? I mean, usually that's good for a 4th or 5th round pick to retain salary. Or could you retain salary on Maccelli, a $3.4 million cap hit, to make it 1.7 to move him someplace to some team that needs scoring? And you can't tell me that nobody was interested in him. You couldn't dump Calle Jarnkrok for a 7th round draft pick. I mean, Michael McCarron got a 2nd round pick. I mean, he's a big dude. He's a good face-off guy, but he's not a particularly great player. He's just big and he's tough. So you know, that's where the asset management. I mean, you're talking roster management with Berube, asset management with Treliving, and you're talking about a guy in Pelly who we know had a career in sports media and I guess ran one of the golf. Was involved with golf for a while. We don't know what the hell his knowledge base of hockey is as a fan. If that's the
Yep.
case, hire me as MLSE chairman. I'll do a better friggin' job than he is.
Yeah, I'll take the paycheck too. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, please. I could use it right now.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, it was really confusing to hear that and just realize the timing on it. You know, even Mike, if this came out at game 80, that they weren't going to qualify him. Okay. Still don't love it, but like, well, you gave it a shot. You saw what he could do in an elevated minutes playing in your top six in a more important role, and you didn't like what you saw, and you're not going to qualify the guy. Don't like it because you could have got the guy back, and you spent the draft pick that you did last year, and, you know, it was kind of a waste of a season, whatever. But, like, you gave it an honest try. Right now, it's just like, you know that period where you could have got rid of the guy and gotten something back for him? It just happened. Like we passed it. It came and it went. What the hell are we doing here right now? I don't understand. The timing of it is outrageous.
Yeah, and I mean, again, anybody that wasn't nailed down, you should have traded. If there was interest in Troy Stetcher as an expiring contract, if you want him back next year, you sign him. He's going to be. This is a bad free agent class. But Troy Stetcher is not going to cost you $3 million a year. If you want to trade him someplace for a 7th-round draft pick and then re-sign him in the summer, great. I mean, but you needed to accumulate draft capital as much as possible, and you needed to use every trick in the book to be able to do that. And I didn't, again, the Nick Waugh deal was great. The Bobby McMahon deal was okay. I think they should have gotten more. The Scott Lawton deal, now we're praying that the LA Kings make the playoffs so you get a 2nd-round pick for him. I just can't believe that there wasn't more interest out there in Scott Lawton. And, not that he's, he's not a fantastic player, but he's a good, solid player. He's the type of player that teams usually want to add before the playoffs. A good penalty killer, good face-off guy. And he goes to a team that right now is outside of the playoffs. That's what doesn't make any sense. He could not find a suitor from any of the competitive teams, contending teams, for a guy who would be a perfect 4th-line center. And I just feel that sort of he mismanaged that situation.
Again, trading and not trusting him to trade. I don't feel comfortable if you're going to go into the summer and you need to make big moves, whether it's Nylander, if it's Matthews, if it's handling Morgan Rielly, if they want to get rid of him, if it's moving a goaltender, no matter what it is, I don't trust that you're going to get adequate value back for the players, or, the value back that you should be getting for those guys in those deals. And it scares me. On the other thing too, by the way, I just want to say, which makes me, it puts me in a weird spot when I'm trying to think about what should happen next year, Mike. And some of it comes back to Matthews and Nylander. Some of it comes back to the defense that you have right now. Some of it is related to Matias Maccelli. Is what does it look like in a new system or under a different coach? In particular, I look at the usage of Matias Maccelli and what he's doing right now. He's getting consistent opportunities in a top 6 role, when earlier in the season we saw him scratch for 9 straight games there. Obviously, Craig Berube was not a fan of him or his game, but then you compare underlying metrics, you compare eye test of Maccelli to a guy like Max Domi, and it just doesn't make sense why Maccelli would be in that position versus where Domi is, and why those guys were playing in different roles. You talk about the Austin Matthews thing and the usage of him as like basically Phil Deneau and being a shutdown forward, shutdown centerman, when in reality he should be used more like what Connor McDavid is, and playing in offensive zone starts and against weaker competition and having his coach match up against him. I kind of struggle a little bit with some of it because I know a lot of people have given up on some of these guys, but I think some of them aren't the worst players or the worst acquisitions, trades aside. I feel like some of it could look better under a new coach, but I don't know, Mike. I don't even know what my question is to you, to be honest with you. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. It's just a weird spot. Like, do you think some of these guys, I guess, could be better next year under new coaching and new regime and new systems, like, or is it just they're a lost cause and we shouldn't hold out hope?
Well, I mean, I know Berube won a Stanley Cup, but everything that I had heard before Berube was hired was that he was sort of a motivational coach and he wasn't an X's and O's guy. And you have to think that maybe, the departure of Lane Lambert last year to go to Seattle and then bringing Derek Lalonde as a replacement, that he lost the X's and O guy and now things have fallen apart. And, with a motivational coach, if they start tuning you out, that's it. You've got a little couple tricks in your bag. And if those tricks don't work and then you're yelling and screaming at them and they tune you out, then it's over with. So the first thing is finding a coach. And honestly, the only one that I can think of that conceivably would, be a home run would be Peter DeBoer. Yep. But they're gonna have to throw a ton of money at him, and that shouldn't be a problem. And that's one thing that they print money. Ask the people who pay season tickets. Go. Yeah, I don't care if you have to pay him $8 million a year. You paid that reprobate Mike Babcock $6.5 million. Okay, so pay a guy like Peter DeBoer, who's one of the best coaches in the league, who would be motivated to win a Stanley Cup because he hasn't. You bring guys in who have won Stanley Cups, and what's the stat? Other than Scotty Bowman, no coach that has won a Stanley Cup has won a Stanley Cup in a second place. So keep hiring those Stanley Cup winners because they won't win here.
Yeah, Pete DeBoer has not won a Stanley Cup yet, so there you go. That spot on the mantle is still open for him. But I'll tell you this: if you're going to keep Pete, or if you're going to get Pete DeBoer, you're going to need to keep William Nylander and Austin Matthews, because I don't think there's a scenario in which he comes here when the plan is for one or both of them to be gone, unless just point this out to people, unless you're like trading William Nylander and getting Werenski or Adam Fox back, which I think would be the only way to do it. But sorry, go ahead.
Or Jason Robertson, who's got a year left in his contract, and Nylander is locked up for 6.
You still need a D-man. You still need a D-man.
Yeah. Oh, no. That's no doubt. I mean, but the problem is, how the hell do you get a number one defenseman?
No, I know.
Yeah, how do you get them? You develop them. Most of the time, you draft them and you develop them. Ben Danford is going to be a good defenseman. He's not going to be a number one.
It's Chris Tanev.
He's Chris Tanev 2.0. And if you have Tanev teaching him the ropes, that might be extremely valuable.
Beautiful,
perfect. But the problem is you've got a bunch of 3s and 4s and 5s. You don't have a 1 and a 2. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I brought this up with somebody earlier today because I scratched my head at this. I was at the 2022 draft, and I hang out with a bunch of the sort of draft nicks who know a lot of stuff about the prospects. And there is no player who was more of a Kyle Dubas type of player than Lane Hutson. And I mean, before Lane Hutson became Lane Hutson, we were talking about him. Well, great college player, great speed, great creativity, small of stature. Sounds like a Dubas guy. Okay. They trade their first round pick to Chicago to get rid of Peter Mrazek. They get a high second round pick. Hudson's there. And what does he do? He takes Fraser Minton. And then Hudson goes at the end of the second round to the Canadiens. And I'm like, okay, now, Lane Hudson could have turned out to be nothing. And look what he's turned out to be. Fraser Minton is a pretty good player, and they threw him away in the Carlo deal. Even Hudson would be your number one defenseman, your power play quarterback. And the person I was speaking to said, well, the reason that they didn't take Lane Hudson is because they already had that mobile defenseman in the fold already in Topi Niemela. But the problem is, as soon as you fired Kyle Dubas and brought in Brad Treliving, who likes Cade Weber, 6'7" defenseman. Niemela, his ice time was decreased each game by the Marlies, and now he's in Europe. So they have nobody to fault but themselves with all this crap.
Yeah, maybe you want to draft and develop that number one defenseman, Mike. Well, maybe it's going to have to be Keaton Verhoff that you go and get this year, who will be joining the boys on Leafs Morning Take tomorrow morning right here on this channel. So good promo, good tee up by you for that one. Subscribe to the channel, Leafs Nation 401, right here on YouTube. Nick Alberga, Jay Rosehill sitting down with Keaton Verhoff. Maybe potential Maple Leaf come the NHL draft in June. Who knows? But let's find out and track everything here on the Leafs Nation 401 YouTube channel. Mike, I don't know necessarily what other moves or players could come up. I think you're probably a little bit more in tune with some of it than I am. Are there anybody with the Marlies, or is there anybody, with the Marlies right now that you think should be or could be getting an opportunity at some point this year? Because the name that I keep hearing, not necessarily of like somebody who could break through right now, but who's playing really well down there with the Marlies, is like a guy like Luke Hames. Would he be ready to take a step? Is there anyone else down there that we're not looking at yet?
I mean, Hames is number one on my list. I mean, he's 22 years old. He's not 20. It's not like he played a few years in the NCAA. He's playing in his second year with the Marlies. He's having a good second year, 15 goals. He's been scoring regularly of late. So why not give him an opportunity? William Villeneuve, right shot defenseman. He's played down there for a while. He's played power play there. I mean, I don't know whether he's an NHL. That's the problem. It's like you've got games that are meaningless. Give them some meaning. Play these guys. Now I think some of the other ones that are down with the Marlies, some of the free agents, undrafted free agents like Boria Vallis, it might be too soon for him. It might be too soon for Noah Chadwick. You don't want to ruin these players that are not ready by calling off too early. I do think, though, the one curious thing, and the signing last week of Artur Akhtimov, now you've got a stockpile between the pipes, and some of the reporting, and maybe I'm wrong here, but some of the reporting on Hildeby not being waiver exempt, according to Puckpedia, they say he is waiver exempt up to playing 35 games. So if that means they bury him in the minors again, they could do it. But I think one of the assets that they have to trade is a goaltender. And for me, I would trade Anthony Stolarz. And don't say, well, you can't trade Anthony Stolarz because he's just signed a 4-year contract. You have stupid general managers who took Tristan Jarry with 2 more years at over 5.3. So getting Stolarz and moving him for something at 3.75, and he's 31 years old, I think there are a few teams that probably would take him as a 1B, and you could move on from him. I wouldn't move Joseph Woll. I would move Anthony Stolarz.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now as well. Unless somebody calls you and offers you some big package that can help you right away with a guy like Joseph Woll or a deal with Joseph Woll, it's Stolarz for me. He's the one that gets moved. Yeah, I mean, I'm not as in tune with what's going on in the Marlies, so that's a good point that you brought up there. And with some of those guys not necessarily being ready and not wanting to force them in here right now. Let's talk a little bit before I get you out of here about the signing from today. I'm probably going to butcher his last name, but Vincent Borghese, I think is how you say it. They signed him to a 2-year deal. Borghese. They signed him to a 2-year deal beginning in the 2026-2027 season. He's going to join the Toronto Marlies on an amateur tryout, which basically means he's going to try out for the team. He's going to make the team, and he's going to join them for the rest of the season is effectively what that says. He's the captain of Northeastern in the NCAA Division I. He's a right-handed defenseman. What do you know about this guy? What do you hear about this guy? And what are your thoughts on the Maple Leafs going out and signing him here today?
Well, it's sort of a departure from Treliving's usual MO, because usually he signs defensemen who are 6'8". He's 5'8". and 173 pounds. He's a right shot. According to what have been told, excellent skater, good shot, feisty. Not sure that he's an NHL lock. Time will tell, but it's a swing, and that it's a free swing, and that's what they have to do with their lack of draft capital. They've gone out over the last few years and gone out and signed Quillen and Hames and Vallis and a few others, and that's the right thing to do. But the problem is, and I'm a little surprised, these guys have to be looking at the Leafs and saying, okay, Quillen signed, who is one of the most sought after undrafted free agents out there. And Hames signed, and he was pretty sought after as well. And are they getting opportunity? No. That would, going forward, like I think the leading scorer for Michigan, TJ Hughes, I think he's one of the most sought after of the undrafted college free agents. You think he's coming to Toronto? I mean, I don't know. The uncertainty. Will Matthews be there? Will Nylander be there? Will I get an opportunity to play? You're almost better off signing with the Chicago Blackhawks because maybe, you cycle through the organization and you get to play. You sign with them. Oh, great. We signed with them. But you didn't get anywhere because they don't give you the opportunity. And that's the failing of this organization. You can't keep signing these guys and then tell them, play for the Marlies. Oh, and you'll get your opportunity. Well, they play for the Marlies 2 years, 3 years, and then nothing happens. Alex Steves is like that. And that was a decent player that you threw away for nothing. And he went to the Bruins and he played well and he got an extension with them.
Yeah, I got in an argument with somebody online about it the other day. I pointed out, if I was a free agent, I wouldn't want to sign here either. And the pushback was like, well, under the last 10 years of the Toronto Maple Leafs, college players have come through and they've made it. And I'm like, well, the 10 years is thrown out. We're talking about the regime that you're under right now because that's who these guys are signing with. They're not signing with Kyle Dubas and the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're signing with Brad Treliving and Craig Berube of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it makes it a whole lot muckier as well. But the scouting report on him is effectively kind of what I had gotten as well, Mike. He's the points that were made by somebody who knows college hockey players a lot better than I do. Very small player, skates extremely well. He's got great character and he moves the puck. Also pointed out that he performed well at the Spengler, which is against men there. They took that college All-Stars team and he looked really good at that. But basically anybody I had talked to about it had pretty much said he's got to kind of overcome the size. He's got to make sure that what he does in the puck movement and getting up ice and transporting the puck and that kind of stuff is going to outweigh the size factor. People pointed out very quickly, well, Lane Hutson's not very big. Yeah, that's great. Lane Hutson is like one of the most talented defensemen when it comes to skills and his feet and his agility and that kind of stuff in the NHL. We'll see what this guy becomes, but effectively saying like, hey, the kid will never give up. He'll never cheat you on effort. He has unbelievable character and drive, which those things to me, Mike, are positive signs in saying that he's going to be a kid who's going to try everything he can to improve on a daily basis. He's going to take on this challenge of joining the Marlies and becoming a pro, and he's going to take it head on, which gives me a lot of optimism, not necessarily that he can jump to the NHL because who the hell knows about that. It's a very hard league to make, but at least that he'll be a guy that we could keep our eyes on. But it's interesting, like, what were the problems that we've had? They got too big, too slow, couldn't move the puck, and there you go, is a signing of a guy who's pinned as the exact opposite of every one of those traits. I thought it was kind of wild that was a signing under the Brad Treliving regime, but maybe that's a sign of what we have in the amateur scouting department here right now.
Well, I mean, there are not many examples of players with his stature being effective in the NHL. I mean, Torrey Krug and Brian Rafalski, Hudson, and maybe a few others. So he's going to have to be a plus skater and very good positionally to be able to make the NHL. And like you said, he's got the opportunity. He'll play the rest of the season with the Marlies, and then he'll get a look at training camp. I'm not saying he's going to make the team or anything like that, but he's going to get exposed to the pro game, and we'll see over the last few games with the Marlies what he is. But this can't be it. You've got room under the 50 contracts. You go out, you give every one of them all the bonuses you need to give them to get them to sign. Because right now you're an organization that is fairly bereft of talent, and if you can get undrafted college free agents, which sometimes you can hit a Tyler Bozak, and sometimes you can hit on on a Bobby McMahon. If that happens, it's found money. You found a player that's going to play for you for a few years and help you out, and you didn't have to use a draft pick on him. That's where your amateur scouting and your scouting of the college ranks, that's where it helps. And hopefully Borghese will be somebody who will help.
And Nicholas B here in the chat says, Berube won't play him. He will play Myers instead. Well, a couple of things.
Berube will be gone. Berube will be gone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I think Berube will be gone, and even if it gets to that point, he's got a ways to go because it doesn't sound like he's a guy who's ready to jump into the NHL next year or by the end of this season anyways. So we'll see how that one plays out. Mike, I appreciate the time here tonight. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
Just lose. I know that, it fly, and I can't remember the phrase that they used on the TSN broadcast, but it was something like, like losing, but with character, or losing with, no, I don't care about right now. It's like, I want 14 straight losses. There's nothing to be gained from winning the rest of the season. I'm sorry. Half of these players might not be back. Like I said, if Matias Maccelli has 49 points in the last game of the season, I send him to the American Hockey League. He does not break 50 points. You stop him.
I was kind of on the opposite side of you on that, because I was saying I think dignified tank is something that they've used a lot on TSN.
Dignified tank.
I was saying I was okay with the dignified tank. Part of it, I think, is just because I want to watch some decent hockey. So I was like, you know what, fuck it, like lose, but let's compete hard. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if you've ever seen The Incredibles, but at the end scene of the first movie, the kid Dash, he's the superhero son, right? His speed is his superpower. So he's racing in like the local elementary school track meet, and he speeds ahead, and he's ahead of everyone. And his dad in the stands is going, slow down, slow down. He falls back too far, and his dad's yelling, speed up, speed up. That's what I was saying. I was like, okay, you know what? Give it more effort, give it more intensity, just so that it's not the most pathetic thing of all time to end this season. And then they rattle off 5 points in 6 games, and I'm sitting here going, whoa, slow down. That's too much, too fast. We don't need that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's like, I don't care about the effort. The season is over with. It's just we have 4 weeks left, and nothing can be gained by winning. So lose is what I have to say.
Fair enough, Mike. Lose. Thanks for the time tonight. I appreciate it. As always, we'll catch up with you again soon, and I imagine a few more times before the season ends. So thanks for doing this, Mike. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Zach.
There you go. Mike in Buffalo from the Hockey Hot Stove covering the Toronto Maple Leafs. Appreciate Mike for giving us his time here tonight on the postgame show. For those of you who want to participate further in tonight's show, the link to call in is pinned there in the chat. So you can click on that link live in the YouTube. You can call in, give your thoughts, let us know how you feel about this one here tonight for the Toronto Maple Leafs as they drop it to the New York Islanders here in game 69 of the season. The St. Pat's game for the Toronto St. Pat's, I guess, is what I should be calling them. The Toronto Maple Leafs here against Matthew Schaefer, Cal Ritchie, and the New York Islanders. And, as we go through the rest of the show, we'll do the play of the game, the grade of the game. We'll do our best bets, all of that kind of stuff and more. And we'll recap our best bets, which I think people will be happy about if they followed. But let's go first to what we have from Super Chats that have come in. And a reminder to people, proceeds from our Super Chats go to Sick Kids Charity. You want to get your question or comment read on the show? Send in those Super Chats. This one comes in from Michael. Michael gets fired up here. He says, Zach, they only got a late first-round pick from Mitch, traded a first-round pick for a third-round pick, a top 6 to Boston. In your opinion, at what point will you have concern about the team's future? Michael, right now, actually. I think a month ago, we ended a stream where I just had no words by the end of the stream, which isn't really great for like a YouTube talk show, but I had no words to end the show. I didn't even know what to say, how to feel, nothing. So at that point of when do you feel concern or when will you have concern? Yeah, it's coming, it's gone. Maxentius Decimus with the super chat says, are we surprised that man purse guys don't have grit? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that is a fair point to bring up there. I guess I would say Mikhail Sergachev seems to be a big fashion guy. He seems to have it, but yeah, I get the sentiment here from Leafs fans. Maxentius Decimus says, buy some lubricant for that mic stand. It hurts me. Yeah, sorry. I mean, reality is I don't really move the mic that much, mostly forward and back. It's when I get over animated and end up smacking my hand out from underneath and hit the bottom of the mic and flip the entire thing. That's when it ends up moving and becomes a problem. So I apologize for that one, but we're still good. We're still rocking here on the postgame show. Again, a reminder to you guys, if you do have thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, and you want to be a part of the show, send in those super chats. So keep reading them, as well as join the call-in link, which is pinned at the top of the chat, and I will send in here again for anybody who does want to participate. But before we go to any of that, let's go now to our best bet segment. Our best bet is a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use promo code NATION. That's NATION, code NATION, NATION. Must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you're someone who knows a gambling problem, visit connectsontario.ca. Best bets for tonight. We actually ended up doing pretty well. Everyone was looking at Matthew Schaefer. I was also looking at Matthew Schaefer, but that wasn't the only thing I was looking at. We bet Schaefer anytime goal. That one loses a half unit. We bet Easton Cowan to record a point. That loses a half unit, so that is 1 unit down. But then we also bet on the other Toronto boy who no one was talking about, Cal Ritchie, who scores here tonight for the Islanders. Scored their second goal of the game, and this one makes that a $195 profit for us on a half unit bet at plus 390. Profiting 195 makes it a 0.95 unit profit here on the night, bringing our total on the season to 1.15 units that we are up. So back in the green here. It feels good. It's St. Pat's night where we're wearing all green here on the post-game show. The Leafs are wearing green, and we get back to the green ourselves. Quickly here before we move on to some final segments and stuff that we've got, because it doesn't seem like people care enough here tonight to call into the post-game show. People are asking about Quintology. What is the Quintology? So I brought this up on Jeff Merrick's show. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with the photo series that the Maple Leafs had done. I think it was in like the early to mid 90s that they had done a lot of these. These are limited edition, as you see there on the poster. Limited edition NHL prints. The Maple Leafs in the early Sundin, Doug Gilmour, Wendell Clark era had done all of those different photo shoots, you know, where they were in Pat Burns' garage, where they were in the medical office. What else do we got on here? When they were like the old school gangsters and they had the old car and everything. Like the Leafs had done all those different types of photo shoots, and I have all of the photos from those series in 95, 96, 96, 97. I think as well I have some from like 92, 93 as well. So I was going to put them up in the new apartment here, but they were given to me as a gift, and the person who gave them to me, my grandfather, had them all in different sized frames and style frames. So I ended up taking them to get them reframed, and when they undid the frames to take the pictures out, they found this poster effectively in one of the pictures. So they gave me the poster to keep, so I figured I would put it up on the wall behind me here until I get my full set done up here in the new studio in the new apartment. So that is what that is, and that is why that is up behind me. Again, reminder, people want to call in link is available in the chat there, so make sure to jump in here tonight on the post-game show. Otherwise, we'll keep the show going here, and we'll get to our final couple of segments and wrap this thing up, because I think that there's also some fatigue. I think that's part of where people are at here on this season and this team, and watching these guys and watching it without Matthews and watching Nylander look like he's out for a summer skate. And it kind of feels like the same conversations every night, and I'm trying to keep it fresh and everything, but some of it is just, I don't know what to say nightly about some of the stuff that happens with these guys. There's a lot of talk about the future, about some of the AHL players that are coming up and playing for you guys. I can't really, offer too much analysis on what you're getting out of your fourth lines and that kind of stuff, because, to be honest, part of it is like, who the hell cares? Some of them are probably not going to be here next year. You're going to get a different look, hopefully. It's just big picture stuff. So it's kind of a lot of what's happening here on the post game, trying to do what I can to take what happens with these guys in the games and extrapolate what that'll be meaning for next season and that kind of stuff. But it does feel very cyclical here on the post game. I understand it, trying to keep it fresh, but I think a lot of people here understand we're on the same page on a lot of that stuff. We did hit 50 likes here on the post game show, so thank you guys so much for liking. That means we will do the smelling salts. If you guys can get it to 100 here before the show ends, we'll do another set of smelling salts. But for the time being, we are only past the first milestone of 50. So I will do smelling salts for you guys here. Smelling salts will continue all season long and into next year, unless anybody says, let's do something different. Here are the smelling salts for tonight. There you go. There's the smelling salts. Okay, we did get a caller here in, so we'll welcome in our first caller of the night, who I'm looking forward to hearing from. Let's hear from Maxentius Decimus. What's up, Max?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's kind of hard, to be honest. I'm not complaining about it, but it's hard to be overly emotional about anything that happens right now, because I think a lot of it is we just don't know. We don't know who will and who won't be here, and that even extends to the GM and the coach. It goes to the players on the team, even as far as like Matthews and Nylander. We don't know what their plan is. So watching some of these games and trying to break down what can happen as we go forward, I don't know, Max. It's a weird situation, it feels like right now.
Yeah, also today is St. Patty's Day, so the whole Slavic or Serbian crew, sorry, I don't want to offend people. The Serb crew is not even here right now, and you look very slick in your St. Pat's outfit, and I think people are out partying and not really thinking too much about the Maple Leafs right now, because, I mean, the season's kind of over. We've already talked about everything that can kind of really be talked about, and now it's just the waiting game.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that. Like, even some of my buddies who normally are watching games and texting me during the games and stuff, they are just checked out on it. Like, they are just so disengaged from what's happening other than what they're seeing on highlights and stuff. People in this market feel disconnected from the team, and I think some of that has to do with what the organization did, Max. It feels like they disconnected themselves from the fan base.
Well, I mean, it has to be said, like, how long can you realistically treat your fans like crap and expect us to just take it? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not talking about one specific thing. It's like all these different little things, like the injury stuff where they just can't give us any information whatsoever, even about our top players, about, how are our top players doing or not. They just don't seem to respect us very much because they know they're just going to make the money anyways. So at a certain point, when the season's over, most Leafs fans just kind of check out at this point.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, how shocked were you, Max, when we saw the specific injury that Auston Matthews suffered? I was mind blown that they announced exactly what it was and the evaluation that they were going to do and when he was going to be reevaluated and announced right away he's out, and they listed off grade 3 MCL tear, quad contusion. Like, I was expecting Austin Matthews will miss the remainder of the season with a lower body injury. Or even worse, which would have pissed me off just because we all would have known or realized like 2 weeks from now when he hadn't played and hadn't skated, if they came out and said Austin Matthews is week to week, he'll be reevaluated with a lower body injury, my head would have exploded. It was shocking to see the exact diagnosis.
I think that had to do partially with the high, the nature of the injury and how like everyone in the league was paying attention to it, like literally everybody, and it was very blatantly like a serious knee on knee. So you can't just like pass it off because I mean they could just not tell Leafs fans, but I mean the whole league was watching that. So I think that's where that changed, and I wasn't really too surprised. The thing that kind of draws my interest is that like if they're so direct about this thing, then the other issue, especially with that taped up shoulder, it just makes everything to me screams like it's a permanent issue that can't be fixed, and they don't want to tell anybody about it.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment. You know, I look at the end of the season last year where Matthews just wouldn't say anything about what happened. That felt weird. It felt weird and unnecessary because you get to the end of the season, end of a playoff series, you can tell guys are battling through something, they're banged up, and then they come out with a laundry list of injuries, you know, separated shoulder, broken ribs, fractured this, sprained that, and Austin Matthews just came out and said nothing about any of it. He dealt with an injury for the whole season. He went to Germany, and then we finished the year and still never told anybody. That screams to me this is a long-term injury that he's dealing with, and it will come and it will go, and they're just not going to tell us.
Essentially, and so we as fans have two options, and there's kind of two camps right now. There's either we just continue trying to tank for that top 5 pick, and we get a pick, and maybe you make a few trades, and we bounce this around, and then we come back next year and we're a playoff team again. Or you have to start having a serious conversation about moving Matthews and Nylander before it's too late, and starting to do like a true rebuild.
Yeah, and you know, I've gone back and forth with myself in my own head, battling some of it, and some of it is the emotion of some of the things. Some of it is getting opinions from other people and then balancing that with my own opinion and stuff. It's hard because on one hand, you know, I look at the talent that these players have and how hard it is to acquire and how long we went without those types of players, Max. And then we were just handed so many at once. You realize, like, it is very difficult to get that superstar caliber player here in your organization. And then the other part of it is where you're at right now, realizing that under different usage, under different coaching, under a different style, it might look very different for these guys as well. I know Matthews, as we just said, is dealing with something long-term, but I struggle to believe that overnight he goes from a 69-goal scorer to a 30-goal scorer, and that's just what he is. I think there's somewhere in the middle that he'll land as a goal scorer, which is extremely valuable, especially as somebody who can provide you with that level of elite defense on top of all of it. But then the other conversation comes up, Max, where you've tried this for 10 years. And for 9 years, the most that you won was 2 playoff rounds. You are now sitting here missing the playoffs for the first time. And it's like, I want it to be a wake-up call where they realize that it's not all just given to you, because these guys have basically made the playoffs from day one. But every time we've looked at them and said something is an opportunity to learn from, as John Tavares has so eloquently pointed out, every time it's a learning lesson, they haven't learned. So to me, I look at that again and say, they haven't learned. They've not advanced any further. They've not shown any signs that they could break through or play differently or try something else. You know, and then we all talk about what just happened with the Gudas incident. You know, there was that video, I don't know if people saw, from McCluskey. It was like a 3.5-minute video that McCluskey put together of a highlight montage, Max, where He put this online, and it was 3.5 minutes of Leafs not responding and sticking up for each other. 3.5 minutes. I watched the entire thing, and I was disgusted the entire time watching it. And you can count how many times Matthews is on the ice, Nylander's on the ice, Rielly's on the ice, where they just don't stick up for each other. And it's like, that's 9 years worth. So why would that change now? Like, what about it would make it change now? If, again, it feels performative and not like it's an actual change.
Oh, 100% it's performative. And, I've been kind of ticked off at a number of players on this team for a couple of years now about how, like, when I played sports, it wasn't at, like, the highest level. It was pretty good level. But everybody had this attitude that, like, I want to win. I like that guy. You just knocked my teammate over. I'm going over there to push you right now. It's and like Rosie said this morning, it's not about like you have to go start punching and this whole big thing about, but it's the attitude of like, no, you're not going to be touching my teammate like that. That's my teammate, and they literally don't have it. And the one thing I want to say is, two things can be true. Is like where you said it's been 10 years of this, and I think that's where a lot of Leafs fans are just completely checked out at this point, because it's like we're not making the playoffs, and a lot of people, they just really don't even give a shit. Because, I mean, if we made the playoffs, we just lose in the first round anyway. So, I mean, I understand that. But at the same time, I honestly have to feel sorry for this current management. And I think the guest this morning was mentioning about the GM, and, we shouldn't be too hard on him right away. It's like he has been stuck in this situation where either they try and retool this and it fails and everyone makes fun of them and the fan base hates them, or they trade the big players go on, win a cup, and then everyone makes fun of them, and it's just like kind of a lose from their situation. So like I have to give Tree Living a little bit of credit, and especially if he was stopped by Shanahan from trading Marner, good Lord, Shanahan should not be eating dinner in Toronto anytime soon.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, and like it also goes back to the group over like the last 9 years where, and even what's happening right now, where every year everybody says outside of the market of Toronto, you can't win with these players. You can't win with these players. And then you run it back with the players and everyone makes fun of them. The team, the organization, the players, the fans, and says, you idiots, you can never win with these guys. And then they lose and they say, see, I told you so. And then the Leafs finally lose one of those guys and everyone says, you idiots, you need those guys to win. And it's like, well, what the hell do we do? It's a different example of the same situation. I get what you're saying completely. But yeah, I just want fresh eyes on it as well, myself, Max. Like, I want to go into the summer, get somebody in here who's not committed to a previous vision, which did kind of come close. You look at how this looked under Tree Living in his first year here, as his second year here, dating back to last season where they go to Game 7 against Florida, and it's like, I was close, and then he has this season that messes everything up. I feel like there's that feeling to him that, like, his idea, his mindset, his trades were right, but I don't know how close they were, and I think a lot of things need to change with this group because I think they worked in those years. I don't think that exact game plan will work every single year going forward. I'd rather have someone come in here fresh and try to start this thing over again.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw as the guest this morning, I can't remember his name, one of the coaches.
Dean Evison.
Yeah, thank you. He was saying, how you have to be patient. You got to wait till the end of the year, and then you'll make your decision. And I really appreciated him saying that this morning because it's like we've had this emotional response where it's like, Berube has to be gone right now. Tree Living has to be gone right now. But you have to really kind of take a step back from this. And they are right. This could be a one-off year. Could be. They don't know. They're looking from business opportunities and like taking a broad view of it. We as fans can have our own view of it, but I'd rather them not just take some jerk response and do an immediate move. Now, however, if you're looking at getting rid of Austin Matthews or William Nylander, I hell do not trust Tree Living to be the guy to do it. So I agree with you there.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's him going out and signing guys, I have no problem. I think he's done a great job with the contracts that he's signed. There's a couple of misses, but let's call a spade a spade. Every single GM on every single roster in the NHL right now has a contract or two that they wish they didn't sign and regrets. Every single GM. So if people are going to pick on him for some of the signings and say, no, he's not a good a negotiator when it comes to contracts, I think you're an idiot. I think that there's mistakes for sure, and that's completely fine to accept. But I think that his body of work from the signing standpoint has been pretty good. The trades have been a terrible track record. And that's what scares me, because this summer, more than anything, Max, you need to make trades because the free agent class is not very good. So what you're going to have to do is get creative. And I don't think Tree Living has that ability in him to get creative. I don't think he has the ability in him to go out and think outside the box and find players who are Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart before they're Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart. You know, I don't think he's capable of doing that. I don't think he's capable of making a good deal on those. And then the other side of it is, if it's the bigger conversation, like what you've brought up here of Nylander and Matthews, I don't trust them to win those.
Yeah, exactly. One thing, too, you're talking with Mike about trading Stolars, and there's one team that I know, like, I really don't like the Oilers, but if there's ever a team in the world that would overpay for a goalie right now, like, it's the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe we can trade Stolars for a solid prospect they have, or, you know, prospect in a pick or something. Get something really good, because I mean they're stuck with Tristan Jarry and Ingram right now. They're screwed.
And they're going to be horny in this summer, I can imagine, to make some changes to the goaltending. I can see them being horny this summer to change things up and get things back in the right direction and overpay on something, especially if Stan Bowman stays there. He's had a tendency here to kind of overdo it a little bit here, trying to get the right team around Connor McDavid, and understandably so. He's got two of the best players in the world, but yeah, I would also be exercising that option as well. Anything else here you got for me, Max, before I get to the next caller?
No, I'll just say hi to Wilfred. He was hanging out during the game, so what's up, Wilfred? And thanks for the call, or letting me call, and have a great night.
Thanks, Max. I appreciate the call, and I appreciate you hanging out in the chat there the entire time as well. So thank you for that, and I look forward to seeing you in the chat and calling in throughout the rest of the season.
Can't wait for this next caller. Have a good one.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate it. There you go, Maxentius Decimus. Let's not make people wait very long for this next caller, because as Max said, he can't wait to hear from him. I can't wait to hear from him either. He's called in twice here on the post-game show. He's always in the chat. He's always on it on Twitter, on Instagram. He is all over the place with the commentary, and I absolutely love it. Let's welcome to the program Francesco. Francesco, do we got you there, buddy? Francesco. I see him waiting. I saw Mac. I know Max said he could see him there as well. Francesco, do we have you? This one I know for sure is not an internet issue on my end. This one ain't on me. Okay, well, we'll see if we can get Francesco connected here. I saw Francesco jump in. I wanted to hear from him. If he doesn't get in, we'll have to wait. But in the meantime, let's get to a final couple of segments while we wait for him. I don't know. He's gone ghost on me here, Francesco. If you can hear me, get in here. Let's go to our play of the game. Play of the game for me. I don't know, man. For comedic purposes, the Stetcher save after Joseph Woll got stuck outside of the net, getting a little too horny, trying to play one. I mean, credit to Morgan Rielly for jumping McLean. Again, too little, too late, but credit to him for doing that. I don't know. There's not really that much that was that exciting in this game. There wasn't really too much that I looked at and said, wow, that was awesome to see. The Lorentz goal came from some great forechecking, but like you hope that basically Grew is the only one of those three who's really going to be a big piece of next season between Yarncroke, Lorentz, and Grew. So great to see them forecheck, I guess, but I don't know. It's tough. It's a dark time here. Send your grades of the game in the chat. We've got Francesco waiting. I can see him still lined up there, but Francesco has not joined the show. So if he does join, I'd be happy to hear from Francesco, but I see him sitting there. He's just not speaking or has left or something, and his name's still there. But let's go to our grade of the game and see what you guys have, and then we'll get out of here with one final segment of the post-game show. Grade of the game. Joseph Woll, I'll go with an A. Nylander, I'll go with like a C-. I thought he looked like he was out for a summer skate. Cowan is like a B-, C+ here tonight. I didn't think he had the greatest night. I'll give a B+ to Grew, who I thought was good. I'll give a B to Jacob Quillen, who played more minutes and I thought looked decent in the time that he got. McCabe and Carlo, I'll give both of them like a C. I don't know. I think that's probably like the best we can do on the grades. Overall, like you lost, so that's an A+. But in terms of actual effort and execution, what, like D-? I don't know. Weird spot to be in grading the games. I'm not going to lie. All right. It looks like Francesco, he's joined and then just left his phone or something because have not heard from Francesco here. So with that, let's do our final segment before we can wrap up the show here tonight. Let's head on over to the Tankathon. As everybody can see over on Tankathon, the 2026 NHL Draft Lottery Simulator, the Vancouver Canucks have the best odds to win the first overall pick. The Calgary Flames have the second best odds. The Chicago Blackhawks have the third. The Rangers, the fourth. The Blues, the fifth. The Jets, the sixth. The Toronto Maple Leafs, which is also at Boston's if they stay here. But the Toronto Maple Leafs at 7 right now. You look at where they're at percentage-wise, 6.5% chance to get the first overall pick. As pointed out numerous times on the broadcast, the New York Islanders did win from the 10th spot last year with a 3.5% chance. So it can happen, ladies and gentlemen. Miracles can happen, but you need to be in the top 5. You cannot be outside of the top 5. Points-wise right now, just for anybody wondering or listening on the podcast, not looking at the screen, the Maple Leafs have 70 points. The Nashville Predators have 69, but the Maple Leafs have played 2 more games than the Nashville Predators. The Leafs have 70 compared to Jets 67, the Blues 64, the Rangers 64, the Blackhawks 62, the Flames 59, and the Vancouver Canucks 48. But also keep in mind the Leafs have 2 more games played than all of those teams except for Vancouver, of which they have 3 more games played. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, the one thing that could get this franchise back on track sooner than we all anticipated, the one thing that could get this franchise in the right position and headed the right direction starting next year, even if you have to trade one or both of the big boys, is getting yourself a top 5 pick and likely a first overall pick and a guy who could be a game changer starting next season. So with that, let's sim the lottery. Yes! We did it! The Toronto Maple Leafs are selecting first overall and are picking Gavin McKenna at this year's NHL draft. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that might have to be the end of the draft lottery forever. We have taken the first overall pick. We will shut it down right there. The Maple Leafs take 6 spots up the standings, get the first overall, and pick Gavin McKenna with the first overall pick. That'll do it for me here tonight on the postgame show. Thank you to everybody who watched, commented, called, all of that. The super chats, I appreciate you all. I will be back on Friday for another edition of Leafs Nation pregame and the Leafs Nation After Dark tomorrow morning right here on this channel. Keaton Verhoff, who maybe the Leafs go off the board and select with that first overall pick. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you on Friday. Until then, keep believing. For more content just like this, including game previews, post-game live shows, Leafs Morning Take, Monday through Friday with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with special guests, as well as instant reaction videos, make sure to be subscribed here to the Leafs Nation YouTube channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss anything, and drop a like.